before Satan became the ruler of darkness, before demons, hell, and evil entered the world, there was an angel, not just any angel. He was the most beautiful being in heaven. Lucifer, created by God himself. Lucifer shone brighter than any other angel. His voice was like music. His wings sparkled like fire and light. And in heaven, he stood closer to God's throne than almost anyone. But something began to grow inside him. Something dangerous. Pride. Lucifer began to look at his own beauty, his own power, his own glory, and a thought slowly entered his heart. What if I could be greater? What if I didn't have to serve God? What if I could rule heaven instead? That single thought would start the greatest rebellion the universe had ever seen. Angels would take sides. Heaven itself would become a battlefield. And one of the most powerful angels ever created would fall. This is the story of Lucifer, the angel who tried to become God and became Satan. Long before evil entered the world, before temptation, before sin, before darkness, there was only heaven. Heaven was perfect, a place filled with light, harmony, and the presence of God. Millions of angels lived there, each created with a purpose, to serve, to worship, and to carry out the will of the Creator. Every moment in heaven was filled with music, praise, and unimaginable beauty. Among all these heavenly beings, one angel stood out above the rest. His name was Lucifer. The name Lucifer means light-bearer, and the name fit him perfectly. At first, no one noticed the change in Lucifer. He was still the radiant angel everyone admired. He still walked among the heavenly hosts with beauty and authority, and he still stood near the throne of God. But inside his heart, something had already begun to change. Pride. Lucifer began to look at himself more and more. The brilliance of his own beauty fascinated him. The power he had been given made him feel important. Instead of looking to God, Lucifer slowly began looking at himself. And the more he admired his own glory, the more a dangerous idea started forming in his mind. Why should God alone receive all the worship? Lucifer watched as angels bowed before the throne of God. He heard the endless songs of praise filling heaven, and something inside him grew restless. I am magnificent too, he thought. Why should I always bow? At first, these thoughts were quiet, almost like whispers in his mind. But pride has a strange power. The more you listen to it, the louder it becomes. Lucifer began imagining something impossible. A throne. His throne. What if he could rise higher than all the other angels? What if he could rule heaven itself? The thought thrilled him, and slowly, Lucifer stopped seeing himself as a servant of God. He began to see himself as someone who deserved to rule. But Lucifer was not alone in heaven. Millions of angels lived there, and many of them respected him deeply. They admired his beauty, his wisdom, and his strength. Lucifer knew this, and soon, those quiet thoughts inside his heart began turning into words. Careful words, persuasive words. Lucifer began speaking with other angels, planting ideas in their minds. He questioned why heaven had only one ruler. He suggested that things could be different, better, fairer. Some angels were confused. Others were curious. But many began to listen. What Lucifer was starting was no longer just pride. It was rebellion. And the rebellion was growing. Soon, heaven itself would be divided. And the peace that had existed since the beginning of creation was about to shatter. Lucifer's words began to spread through heaven like a quiet storm. At first, they sounded harmless. He did not openly declare war against God. Instead, he asked questions. Questions that planted doubt. Why should only one sit on the throne? Are we not powerful too? Why should we always bow? Some angels ignored him. They knew that God was the creator of everything. They knew that heaven existed because of his power and love. But others began to listen. Lucifer was persuasive. He was beautiful, confident, and respected. And slowly, his rebellion started to grow. Angel after angel began to follow him. They believed his promises. Lucifer told them that heaven could be different, that they could rise higher, that they could share the glory of ruling. What they did not realize was that pride was leading them into destruction. Soon, the rebellion could no longer remain hidden. Lucifer made his decision. He would no longer serve God. Instead, he would rise against him. The rebellion had begun. Across heaven, angels began choosing sides. Some remained loyal to God, standing firm in truth and obedience. Others joined Lucifer, believing his vision of power and freedom. For the first time in all of creation, Heaven was divided. But Lucifer was not the only powerful leader among the angels. There was another, a warrior of heaven. His name was Michael. Michael was the defender of God's kingdom, a mighty archangel known for his strength and loyalty. When the rebellion erupted, Michael and the faithful angels rose to protect heaven. What followed was something that had never happened before. War, not on earth, but in heaven itself. Light clashed against rebellion, faithfulness against pride. Angels fought against angels. And at the center of it all stood Lucifer, the once glorious angel who now challenged the throne of God. The battle for heaven had begun, and the outcome would change the destiny of the universe forever. The rebellion had begun. Lucifer had gathered a vast number of angels who believed in his vision. They stood behind him, ready to challenge the authority of God himself. For the first time since creation, heaven was no longer perfectly united. Two sides had formed. On one side stood Lucifer and the angels who followed him, filled with pride, ambition, and the desire to take power. On the other side stood Michael and the faithful angels, those who remained loyal to God and refused to abandon the truth. Then the unimaginable happened. War broke out in heaven. It was not a war like those fought on earth. There were no armies of flesh and blood, no swords made by human hands. This was a battle between spiritual beings of immense power. The sky of heaven filled with movement and light as angels clashed in a struggle for the future of creation. Michael led the armies of heaven with courage and unwavering loyalty. He stood as the defender of God's kingdom, facing Lucifer directly. Lucifer, once the most radiant of angels, now stood as the leader of rebellion. The glory that once reflected God's light was now twisted by pride and anger. The battle was fierce. Angels loyal to God fought to protect heaven. Angels who followed Lucifer fought to seize control. But there was one truth Lucifer had refused to accept. No created being could ever overthrow the Creator. Lucifer had power, but it was power given by God. And against the authority of the Almighty, rebellion could never succeed. The battle did not last forever. One by one, Lucifer's forces began to fall back. The rebellion was collapsing. Michael and the loyal angels pushed forward, driving Lucifer and his followers away from the throne of God. The moment had come. Lucifer had lost. The angel who once shone with heavenly light, the angel who had dreamed of ruling heaven, was about to face the consequence of his rebellion. Lucifer's story did not end the moment he was cast out of heaven. In many ways, that was only the beginning. The angel who once walked in the light now became the enemy of that light. The one who once led worship in heaven now sought to turn creation away from God. But the fall of Lucifer reveals something much deeper than the story of one rebellious angel. It reveals a warning. Because Lucifer did not fall because he was weak. He did not fall because he lacked beauty, intelligence, or power. In fact, Lucifer had more of those gifts than almost any other angel. Lucifer fell because of pride. The moment he began to look at his own greatness instead of the greatness of God, his heart changed. And that same danger still exists today. Pride can quietly grow inside any heart. It begins with a small thought. I deserve more. I should be greater. I should be the one in control. That was the same path Lucifer walked. The Bible reminds us that pride always leads to destruction, but humility leads to life. Lucifer wanted a throne above heaven. Instead, he lost everything. But God's story did not end with Lucifer's rebellion. Even after evil entered the world, God had a plan to restore what had been broken. A plan that would one day send Jesus Christ into the world to defeat sin, darkness, and the power of Satan. And that is